Schedule prediction season rolling right along. What is the record going to be of the Clemson Tigers in 2023? And Clemson to me is one of the most fascinating teams in the entire country because of what the expectations are on the Tigers. Think about how we perceive Clemson right now. Some people perceive Clemson to be taking a couple steps back. And to a degree, you're like, okay, that's fair because Clemson has kind of set their own expectation for the rest of the country when they made the college football playoff every year from 2015 to 2020. So they have this expectation that they have set for themselves, this precedent they've set for themselves. But I want to make this very, very clear. Clemson, by their own standards, is maybe a half step or two back from where they'd like to be. But Clemson as a whole is nowhere near down. Clemson is still a force when it comes to the college football landscape. Won the ACC a season ago, and we're having this conversation around, well, where's Clemson trending right now? Like that in itself should tell us how highly we think of that logo, how highly we think of Dabo Swinney, how highly we think of this roster. And I look at this team right now, the issues they have from last year, I think they did a great job addressing. More on that in a second. Make sure you're subscribed. We talk ball every single day now on this very channel, live on Tuesdays and on Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern. We got a podcast for you. Apple, Spotify, however you get them, type in the Hard Count with JD Pickell. Promise you, you'll find us there. I'm on social media at JD Pickell, Twitter, Instagram, all that in a bag of chips. Okay, thank you very much. Let's keep on rolling now. Like I was saying a second ago, the issues from last year, in my opinion, Clemson's done a really good job addressing. And there's so much made about Dabo Swinney and people saying, well, the game's passed him by. He's not willing to adapt. He's not willing to evolve. And a part of that, you say, okay, yeah, maybe some of you would like to see him go to the portal a little bit more. I feel that same way. I'd love to see Dabo Swinney utilize the portal. Think he could knock it out of the park. But to say that he is not evolving and not adapting to what Clemson requires just feels untrue. Because he went out and got the best assistant coach in the country, according to the Broyles Award, in Garrett Riley from TCU to be his new OC, to kind of revitalize that side of the football. And people forget, too, he very easily could have made the pitch to DJU to come back one more year because he's got more eligibility. But Dabo Swinney, knowingly, in the ACC title game, made a pivot. And I have to believe that when Dabo Swinney said, Cade Klubnik, you got the rest of the game, he knew he was saying goodbye to DJU. He was cutting him loose. And so Dabo Swinney made two difficult decisions, I would imagine, to make a pivot in the best interest of his football team. He made a pivot to help his team long-term achieve success. And that's what I think he's going to do with Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik now, combining forces. Here's my big question mark, though, for the operation at Clemson. It's the wide receiver position, the wide receiver room. DJU caught a lot of heat last year for what he didn't do. Looking at this receiver room, I think you got to have some guys be able to separate just a little bit more downfield. The number I'm looking at, yards per completion, yards per reception, however you want to put it, 6.8 yards last year. Number 86 in the country for Clemson. It's not horrible, but it's not anywhere near good enough for Clemson. Not anywhere nearly good enough to go and win a national title. And Clemson knows that. And going back to what I was encouraged by for Clemson, the way that they have adapted their offensive philosophy is going to have that number be much, much higher next season. I fully believe that with Garrett Riley running the show. More manufactured explosives, meaning we're going to run the football with Big Will Shipley, one of the best backs in the country for my money. Big Phil Maffa getting downhill. Those two dudes going to pound the rock, make those safeties creep up. A lot of real estate behind them to hit the open receiver. Love Antonio Williams. I feel good about some of the guys they have in that wide receiver room, Bo Collins being one of them. But you want to see it formulate. You want to see it come to reality. So for Clemson, that's my big question mark for them offensively. Can they be more explosive at that wide receiver position? They're going to be good enough, I think, offensively to win the ACC again. I fully believe that. They're going to be good enough. Can they be good enough to get to the college football playoff? That's my question, but I get excited about Cade Klubnik, get excited about Garrett Riley and what they're bringing to the table. Now, defensively, man, defensively for Clemson, I define them as the off-road tires. And you and I know when you have tires that can go off-road, your options just become much, much more vast as to where you can travel to. You can win ugly games. You can play game control. You can slow the game down offensively if you were to want to do that for Garrett Riley. Not really in his philosophy, but maybe they want to if they get into one of those games and they're having trouble getting it going offensively. Because this defense, I think you're going to be able to lean on. Bring back 75% of the production from a season ago that only allowed 23 points a game. That front seven is just silly. Xavier Thomas, it's a bad dream coming off the edge, man. Barrett Carter, pretty sure his zip code resides wherever the Clemson weight room is. Pretty sure he just has a cot and pulls up in there and does curls and does squats and all that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's just how he gets down in his pastime. They got some guys. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., they got some dogs now in this front seven. Now, the secondary last year was not bad. At times they were bad. So what are you, if you're bad at times, you're just inconsistent. Saw them look phenomenal against UNC and Drake May, who's going to be the number 2 pick this coming season. And then I saw them really struggle against Wake Forest. So I understand they were dinged up last year. So the hope then is that the depth and the experience is able to hold. Depth obviously kind of going hand in hand with having some health, but they don't have bad players on the back end. Like, that's what I think we really need to hammer home here. It's not like the personnel is just horrific for Clemson, and that's why they were inconsistent. They were inconsistent because they were playing young players. Like Nate Wiggins was a 4-star player out of high school. Dude's got some ability. We saw him really come on at the end of the year, especially in that ACC title game. They got to be more consistent on the back end because if they can, that front seven is going to hold it down. And at that point, I don't know how you attack this Clemson defense. So with that being said, let's take a quick look at this schedule right here. There's a couple of things that stick out to me. 2 biggest games of the year at home. You got Florida State week 4. You got Notre Dame to start November. Both you circle, underline star, potentially some college game day potential right there. The things that I don't like about this schedule, though, I don't love that you have NC State at NC State the week before you play Notre Dame. Classic look-ahead spot. Don't love that. I don't like that you finish with UNC and then go to South Carolina. There's always that what-if factor with Drake May. Even though I don't expect UNC to be dynamite this year at South Carolina, we learned last year they're always going to be a bit of a factor with Shane Beamer and the boys getting that thing rolling. Who knows what we get with Spencer Rattler. But in a word for this schedule for Clemson, I think it's manageable. Nothing crazy. You're still going to have your work cut out for you. But I love that you get Florida State and Notre Dame at home. And when I look at this record, I think you can find the worst case looking like 9-3. Like 9-3 being the floor for Clemson. Maybe there's a way that happens. Maybe they just kind of walk out there and don't have their best game at NC State. And maybe, those games that we also talked about with Florida State and South Carolina, UNC, like maybe those catch them on the right Saturday. Anything's possible with college football. But my prediction for Clemson is 11-1. I think Clemson will go 11-1, and I think they'll find themselves right back in the ACC title game. Now remember, no more divisions in the ACC. So we're just taking the top 2 teams. So I'm a Clemson fan. I'm looking at that game against Florida State in week 4, and I'm saying, all right, let's let the chips fall where they may in this game. There's a very good chance you're going to have to beat Florida State at the end of the year to win the ACC title. And here's the thing that's interesting about Clemson right now, and this is something I really like for them. The spotlight has always been on Clemson. The pressure has always been on Clemson in recent history since they've been reeling off college football playoff appearances and since they've had guys get into the NFL and stuff like that. But for the ACC this coming season, the pressure's still on Clemson. Still a lot of eyeballs on Clemson. But that spotlight, where Clemson was usually the only team standing there, now it's looking a little bit more crowded. Now Florida State has been that team that's generating all the headlines, the team that's probably going to be on the cover of a lot of your ACC preview magazines. Like that's the team that's really generating a lot of the hype. So if I'm Dabo Swinney and I'm Clemson, I'm, one, using this as bulletin board material. Hey, they don't believe in y'all anymore. But also, I'm liking the fact that maybe we fly just a little bit lower under the radar this year. I think that could benefit them tremendously. Being able to just kind of work in the shadows a little bit more, be able to be a little bit more low profile, keep it all, close to the vest internally. Don't worry about us. We're just doing our thing over here. Don't worry about us. Yeah, new quarterback, new OC, probably not going to work. Don't worry about us. And then you find yourself back in the ACC title game, and you find yourself making some noise and potentially having a chance to get back to the college football playoff. Wouldn't that be something? Last thing I want to say about Clemson, and when it comes to their operation as a whole, the conversation around Dabo Swinney until he goes to the transfer portal is going to be unavoidable. he needs to do this differently. He needs to go to the portal. He needs to make other kind of hires. Like, there's all this being said about Dabo Swinney, or has been said about Dabo Swinney previously. Personally, I pull for Dabo Swinney. Like, I'm not a journalist. We're able to be as opinionated as we want here. Dabo Swinney, in my opinion, is a guy who I root for because he has such conviction with how he runs his operation. Like, Dabo Swinney does it his way, and he makes no apologies about it. And if you rewind the tape just a little bit, it's not so different from a situation going on in Ann Arbor, Michigan not too long ago. A lot of people had a lot to say about Jim Harbaugh and his philosophy offensively and the way they were doing things and how they were recruiting. And everybody has something to say about how they would do it differently until your way works. So if Clemson wins the ACC again and gets to the college football playoff, I think you would hear a lot less buzz around Dabo Swinney should do this, that, and the other differently. So I'm excited for this season for Clemson. I think they have a lot of things last year that weren't strengths. I think they've really improved a lot of those weaknesses. And I think the roster itself is very much so built to compete yet again for an ACC title and have a whole heck of a lot of fun in the postseason. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Live Tuesday, live Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you're locked in. Make sure you're subscribed. Now we're pushing towards college football season in less than 50 days. Want y'all part of it. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.